National tragedies that is the first to be remembered by an entire generation or generations of young Americans at the time. I remember the assassination attempt on President Reagan. I remember that in 1981. In 1986, I was 13 years old when the Space Shuttle Challenger lifted off from Florida. And on the Space Shuttle Challenger, Jennifer, as you remember, was Christa McAuliffe. Christa McAuliffe was a school teacher from New Hampshire. She was to be the first teacher in space. The flight lasted 73 seconds after blasting off from Kennedy Space Center, and it exploded on live television as it was being watched in classrooms, I should say, all across America because of the high interest of a school teacher, and certainly at the school that has now been named after Christa McAuliffe in New Hampshire. All 7 astronauts on board, including, obviously, Christa McAuliffe, were killed. Your thoughts of that day? Do you remember? I remember very vividly.
I do. It's actually the first one of these moments. We have these national moments where everybody remembers exactly where they are, where they were, where that moment, what it felt like. And I was in the 4th grade at the time at Our Lady of Lourdes School in Tujunga, and I was sitting with our 4th grade class, and because, as you mentioned, the high interest of Christa McAuliffe being in the Challenger, the first teacher in space, we actually had a television rolled into our classroom, and we were able to watch that launch live. And after the explosion, our teacher, remember, I still actually exchanged letters with her today. Mrs. D'Amatos is her name.
Did she cry?
She cried. And I remember some of the kids in the class cried. Some didn't understand the gravity of the situation. But I remember she kind of shut it off and she pushed it down the hall. And
she removed the television.
She shut it off, moved it down into the hall, and she went outside. And I think must have been conferring with some of the other teachers
on
because
what to do.
Other classrooms were kind of worried about what to do. And thankfully, I think she kind of talked to us and said, we'll hear more about this with your parents. What you do is pray. I went to a Catholic school.
Yes.
And then we moved on with our day. But everybody remembers that. What were you doing at the time?
I was. This won't surprise Morning Answer listeners. I was in school. I was 13. I was in the 8th grade. I was out sick that day. I was not at school, and I was watching. Memories are, remember old Hulk Hogan, WWF. You could buy the videotapes and watch his greatest matches.
Yep.
I was watching one of those, and I hit stop on it because I was real sick. I couldn't do anything but watch. And I hit stop, and when I hit stop, as you recall with the VCR, the way they worked, when you hit stop, live television would come onto the screen, and I saw that funnel. A funnel is the word that comes to mind, and it's probably not the perfect word, of smoke.
That streak.
Yeah, that streak. That's right. And those plumes of smoke. And I couldn't quite make out at 13 what I was seeing. At that point, the phone rang, and it was my dear mother calling from work. And she said, "Are you okay?" Because she knew she had an emotional son. And I said, "Mom, I'm okay, but what's on television?" And she said, "Sweetheart, the space shuttle exploded." I said, "With the school teacher?" And she said, "Yes." And so my mom let me know. And let's pay tribute to the Challenger disaster heroes. 7 people were killed that day. Francis Dick Scobie, he was the commander on the flight. Pilot Mike Smith, mission specialist Judith Resnick, Ron McNair, Ellison Onizuka, and payload specialists Christa McAuliffe and Greg Jarvis. Again, Christa McAuliffe, the first teacher in space. She went through an incredible auditioning process to become the person.
It was such a big deal, and everyone was so excited about that, being the first civilian in outer space.
Yeah, and the disintegration of the Space Shuttle Challenger, of course, proved a pivotal moment in the Reagan presidency. President Reagan was in his 2nd term, and Don Regan, who I think was chief of staff, when they needed a particularly emotional speech,
they did.
Would say, and this sounds, in 2019, this sounds a little inappropriate, but he would say, "Call that girl." And that girl was speechwriter Peggy Noonan. And Peggy Noonan came in, and a line, which we'll hear in a moment, I'll tell you where the line was borrowed from after we hear the line. President Reagan, on that night, was supposed to give the State of the Union address on that night of January 28, 1986, 33 years ago today, when the Space Shuttle Challenger exploded in front of family members and students who stood on the ground looking awestruck at this streak of smoke in the air 73 seconds into the flight. And President Reagan postponed the State of the Union. We had mentioned that last week.
That's right.
I think I had said the only other time was when this had happened. Here's a portion of then President Ronald Reagan, may he rest in peace, addressing America on the night of the tragedy from the Oval Office.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'd planned to speak to you tonight to report on the State of the Union. But the events of earlier today have led me to change those plans. Today is a day for mourning and remembering. Nancy and I are pained to the core by the tragedy of the Shuttle Challenger. We know we share this pain with all of the people of our country. This is truly a national loss.
President Ronald Reagan, the late, great President Ronald Reagan, he ends the speech here that was written by Peggy Noonan, who went on to write the 1,000 Points of Light imagery for then candidate George H.W. Bush, the vice president, running.
A prolific political speechwriter, for sure.
Absolutely. And still writes today, and you can see her all the time on Sunday shows and whatnot. This is sort of the highlight, I think, what she's most remembered for when American history is studied. Here, at the very end of these 16 seconds, it might give you the chills to hear President Reagan's voice and this beautiful line, which comes from a poem, the poem called High Flight by John Gillespie Magee, an American airman who wrote this. This was all put together rather quickly by Peggy Noonan, and President Reagan delivered the perfect words, the perfect way to a grieving nation 33 years ago tonight.
We will never forget them, nor the last time we saw them this morning, as they prepared for their journey and waved goodbye and slipped the surly bonds of earth to touch the face of God. Thank you.